when we put in an ad, you know, I was taking a lot of the phone calls, and I remember he said he'd been with his band Flaming Youth, which sounded sort of very poppy, and then he said that he'd played with George Harrison, and that of course impressed me and the others a lot, but we found out later it was actually he played tambourine on a George Harrison session, but anyway, it did the trick.
A lot of tapes were sent in, and we'd listen to people we thought might be suitable. And you know, the thing about, we never really thought about Phil for lots of reasons. One was we weren't sure his voice could cope with the range that we required. But most important of all, I didn't think he'd want to do it, because it changes your life, and we knew that.
The one thing he wasn't was pushing for it. I didn't feel that, you know what I mean? I think the doubts we had, he had the same doubts too, you know what I mean? And his voice was always, at that time, quite pure. And as Tony said, you weren't sure he could find that kind of rough edge that Peter had and some of the songs needed. As it turned out, within a couple of years, hammering around the world, he soon got it, didn't he?
He did indeed, yes.
And a very good sort of rough edge too.
I remember the first gig very well, actually, because I remember looking up.
Where was it?
It was London, Ontario, wasn't it? Yeah, see. At least that's what I've read. No, I was playing, I was so used to looking up and seeing Pete, and things like that, and I was looking up and see Phil, and for a start, as you know, he's a lot shorter. and he was wearing, I think he was wearing some sort of Hawaiian shirt or something, wasn't he? It's my memory anyhow. And it just looked very unlikely, and I thought the first song I thought, oh God, this is weird, I don't know about this at all. And I could just see the way, when he was talking to the audience, the way they responded, and they, when they laughed at his jokes, they kind of laughed with a kind of warmth. And I felt, what I realised at that point was the audience really wanted to like him.
I remember seeing Phil after the first song, and he had a little bit of paper with his, what he was going to say, or outlined on a bit of paper, and I saw this hand, right, and the white paper was shaking like this, for the first introduction. And then by the time the second one came, or the third one came, it kind of, his hand steadied. So I thought, we're going to be okay then. If I remember rightly, we were in the middle of Abacab. We were in the middle of the album, when the band album, when his thing came out. I remember the single going to number 4, I think, in the first week, and it was fantastic. I don't know, it sounds odd to say now, but we still seem a bit removed from it, funnily enough. Okay, he had to go and do some stuff, but until the album was finished, he was pretty much locked in by a bit of promo and stuff to making the album. It wasn't until the album was finished, really, that he kind of went mad. And then the next few years, it went that way. So I think over the next year, to be honest, I think when we came out to the next album, it occurred to me after the huge success of Face Value, you might not want to do it. Which I would have understood, you know what I mean? He got a fantastic solo career. But somehow, people never seem to understand it, really. We seem to get back together again each time after his sort of huge solo success. And it kind of felt the same. I mean, I know it sounds a bit odd to say, and people never believe me, I'm sure, when I say that, but it didn't change anything, really. We were the same sort of guys. It didn't come in any different, a bit like, I've had a lot of success, guys. I'm in charge. It didn't change the balance that we had as 3 individual guys together.
I think, as I said before, really, what tended to happen, I think, to a large extent, was that the group became more even. The 3 of us sort of, equal partners, as it were. Because there's no doubt that when Phil originally took over the vocals, he was slightly the junior party, because he'd sort of joined later. I know it seems ridiculous, only about a year or 2 after the band had formed, but it still felt like that. I think it felt like that to him. And I think that made it much easier. And we all had our strengths as well. I mean, Phil definitely is quite strong, sort of with sound ideas and things. So you'd kind of, each person would dominate in the area which they were best at, I felt. And obviously you'd have areas which you'd share, like lyrics and the writing of the music and stuff. So it worked out really well, I think. And I think some of those albums, I mean, particularly for me, Making Invisible Touch and We Can't Dance, was some of the most fun we ever had.
When I heard that Phil was writing something, I didn't know even if he could. It was one of these things that I heard him sing with the group and play. He's a great musician, and also I think he wrote only one song called "More Fool Me" on Selling in England by the Pound, and then he would co-wrote a few things here and there. But I thought, what is he going to do on his own? And I remember the first time I heard "In the Air Tonight" was he had a demo, and I was going back into London after our rehearsals at, I think, Shepperton Studios, and he says, I'll give you a ride back into town, because he was going into town, and I thought this would be interesting. And he had 2 songs that were demoed with drum machine and keyboards and his voice, and he put on In the Air Tonight. And as I heard this song, I was thinking, I didn't know this guy could write music at all. I was very impressed with the first time I heard it, and I thought, oh my God, this guy's going to be able to go on his own. And I also thought to myself, if he goes on his own, what's going to happen with Genesis? And, well, obviously they were able to balance both out as it went on. And then I got to play on those songs, which I was really happy about. We went on the road in 1985. I believe it was our 1985 No Jacket Required tour. And we were playing certain venues, and I think no one expected these things to sell out as much as they did. First of all, no one expected No Jacket Required to be as big of a record as it turned out to be. None of us. I think the fact that he was different than Genesis helped him too. I mean, Genesis being a great group by themselves, but he still came out there and was able to do it by himself. I think you heard his personality come through his music. I mean, that voice that he has is just, it feels like you know the guy. Now, I do know him, but if I didn't know him, I would feel like I knew him. That sound, it's just very unique.
Make sure everything's done, because he hates failure. He hates anybody slacking, and just not being on the ball. So if you're going to sort of play hard, you've got to be responsible enough to get up in the morning and get your job done. If not, I think it's good night, Irene.
He's a total pro, and he just wants everything spot on. And, he works 110% and he expects 110% off everybody else, and it's good. Keeps you on your toes, and it's worth doing, if it's worth doing right.
He was big, I mean, you couldn't go anywhere, do anything. We lived in the hotel rooms. You just couldn't go out, especially if you went to Latin countries. It was crazy. Argentina was madness. But it was fun. I mean, when you pull up at a hotel and thousands of people, and you do feel part of it. Although you're only working, you do feel part of it, You kind of get wrapped up in it. But it was ginormous. You just couldn't go out. I mean, you couldn't sit down and physically eat a meal, because they were around everybody, from waiters as well, but people sitting at other tables in between spoonfuls would come up for autographs and be yelling. It was just not feasible to leave the hotel room and function correctly anyway. So it was out of back doors, through kitchens, little elevators where the staff come up and down, and that's how we manoeuvred around the world.
We were doing the Dancing at the Light album in France. We'd rented a chateau. And one day he calls Danny, says, "Danny, can you book me a room at the Beau Rivage in Lausanne?" It was the first anniversary of him and Oriane meeting. And I would like a bouquet of flowers, 2 bottles of Dom Perignon, and a card saying, "To Oriane, I love you, Phil." So Danny's organising it, and I'm just sitting.
No, I love you, me.
No, he said, "I love you, Phil." It was so.
Oh yes, right.
Danny was organising it, and I was sort of eavesdropping, and I realised he's having a problem, with the translation, and he's saying, "No, I am Danny. I'm not coming. No, it's Phil Collins and Oriane." Right, okay. I want a bottle of Dom Perignon and bouquet of flowers. Okay. "No, I'm Danny. I'm not coming. The card is from Phil to Oriane." Okay. And I thought, this is going to go horribly wrong, So the next day, Phil comes in. I'm sitting eating my breakfast. I got a mouthful of baked beans. And he throws this card down in front of me. He goes, "Read that." And it's like, it says, "To Phil, I love you, Danny." In the meantime, Danny's door was just down the corridor from the breakfast room, and he knocks the door and shows the card to Danny, and he says, "What's this?" And Danny reads, he goes, "Well, I do."